Hello everybody and welcome to the Introduction to Business Analytics using Excel Lesson 2. My name is Boris Furman and we're going to discuss pivot tables. Objective of the class is we're going to learn about pivot tables, what they are, and we're going to build them manually to understand the grouping, aggregation, pivoting. We're going to build simple pivot tables. Then we're going to group by multiple columns. We'll do show value as, refreshing data, and we'll use slicers. Today we're going to be working on the data car sales data sets. It's basically a dealership data set that has dates, the name of the customer, the dealer name, has a company, basically the make and model of the car sold, IDs of the car, that identify each car separately, the color, the price the car sold at, the dealer name, number, the dealer region, body style of the car, name of the dealer. In your homework, you'll be working with this Northwind Trader dataset, which is also a retail sales with order IDs, quantities sold, discounts, amount sold, customer IDs, product names, suppliers, supplier country, and name and category of the product. You will be asked to build the pivot tables from the data. You should be able to learn how to build them from the examples that we're going to discuss in the class. Okay, let's begin. Pivot tables is probably one of the best tools in Excel, one of the most widely used, that allows us to create reports, aggregate data and give reports, summarize data, very often asked for by business stakeholders to do this type of reports. So we're going to start by building them manually. We're going to work with this toy data set of 7 records, where we have 2 sales representatives, Alex and John. They're selling car categories, trucks, sedans. They sell on certain dates. They have amounts that they sold each car for, and we have the model of the car that was sold. To illustrate, we're going to start by business requirements that business is asking us as data analysts to create reports, and as we build them, I'll explain the concepts. So first, business is asking us to create a report like this. For each sales representative, we want to show the amount sold, an average amount. So this amount is total amount that's sold by the business representatives in our data set. And this amount is by John, this is by Alex, and this average sales price for Alex and John, and then total amount sold. So how do we approach this particular problem? First, we're going to sort our data set by sales representative. And we're going to divide our data set into 2 separate groups, which we call step first, which is grouping. So now we divided our data set into 2 separate groups. Then we're going to calculate aggregation amounts, which aggregation amount we're going to apply a function to these groups to come up with one number. For example, numbers we're going to come up with the sum amount of sold, the sum of sale amounts, and average amount. So we have two statistics for this group that we came up with. And then we do the same thing for the group for the John sales representative. And we're going to have average amount for John. Now that we got the statistics for each group, we're going to collapse the 3 rows in the first group into 1 row because we have the same sales representative, and display the amounts that total amount sold by John and total amount sold by Alex. Average amount sold by Alex and average amount sold by John, and total amount that was sold by both sales representatives. So to summarize, we went through 3 steps. First, we created groups from our original data set. We applied aggregate functions to each one to calculate statistics for each group. And then we join or collapse the data, each group represented by a single row in our report. The only question remains is why it's called pivot tables, why we're using pivot tables to do this type of reports. We will discuss that later in the example. Let's discuss another business ask, business requirement. Business asks us to create this type of report. We want to show not only total amount sold by each sales representative, we also want to see what kind of categories the representative sold. So we want to, for each sales representative in a category, we want to collapse data into 1 row and get sale amount, total sale amount, and average amount. Once we get it, so now for Alex we have 2 rows. The sales he did in trucks, the sale he did in sedans, and then we combine it in a subtotal for Alex. So, and we do the same thing for John, and we combine it for John. So this report contains the same data that the previous report had. Alex sold 118 and John sold 158, but it gives more details about how Alex and John were selling per category. So how would we approach this? How would we approach this business requirement? First, we would divide our original data set into 4 different groups. One group is for Alex selling trucks, another one Alex selling sedans, another one was John selling trucks, and the third one is with John selling sedans. So here's our 4 different groups. Again, for each group we will calculate average amount and total amount, and then we will collapse each group into a single row because sales rep and category is the same for all rows in the group. We don't need multiple rows. We will collapse them into this report. So for Alex with truck, this is total amount, this is average amount. For Alex and sedan, This is total amount. This is average amount. And then we can calculate subtotal for Alex. We do the same thing with John. Total amount, average amount, subtotal for John, and then we can get grand total. So grouping by 2 columns is same thing as grouping by 1 column. It just changes the way we create groups. But once we got our groups, then the same aggregation logic is applied, and we come up with a report. So now we come back to pivoting. Again, we're going to look at the business requirement. Business is asking us to add more information. This is type of report that business is asking us to do. For each sales representative, Alex and John, we're going to look at each date that sales were made. And for each sales representative and a date, in intersection of these two, date and sales representative, we're going to put total amount that the sales representative sold on this date. So why we call it pivoting? Because dates were part of our column values. They were not column headers. We turn the values of the column, we take the values of the column and make them header names. This process of changing, pivoting, that's why it's called pivot table, because we turn something that's were values and turn them into header names. Let's do step by step how we will approach this business requirement. So first, again, we're going to break our original data set into 2 groups. And create the two groups, one for Alex, one for John. Then we're going to also look at what are the unique values for the dates we have for John and Alex. And we're going to create headers for each date based on unique values for dates we have. So we could have, in our original data set, we could just look at a list of dates, and we have January 1, January 2. So now that we got the list of dates, we will go and calculate the values. I'll hide this for now. So now we have the dates. Now in each of these cells, we're going to calculate for Alex, and on the January 1st, we're going to sum the amounts. For Alex in January 2nd, we sum the amount. And Alex does not have anything on January 3rd. Then we do the same thing for John. Sum amounts for January 1st. Here's we made a mistake. Sum amount for January 1st. Then sum amount for January 2nd. And then sum amount for January 3rd. As you can see, the process is very labor intensive and error prone because we're doing it all by hand. And now we collapse, basically we take these 2 tables, collapse it into one. So Alex, here's our 2 sales reps, here's our dates. And then we just copy the values. And now we have a report which is called the true pivot table, because we pivoted, we changed the values of the column became headers of the column, and we calculated the report that shows us that John on January 1st sold $40,000 and John on January 3rd sold $45,294. Here we can have our totals. This total represent total amount sold on January 1st by Alex and John. This amount represents total amount sold by Alex and John on January 2nd. This one on January 3rd. This is sum on the margin, called margin sum. It's total amount sold by Alex on any days, total amount sold by John in any days, and this is grand total, how much we sold in any days by all sales reps. This basically is a basis of pivot tables. We went through all stages. We grouped the data, we pivoted some of the values to the table headers, and we created a report. Okay, let's actually try to build reports using Excel pivot table tool. Before we do that, please go to File and Options. Click Data, and here click Edit Default Layout and select Report Layout, Show in Tabular Form. Let me make it larger so you can see it. Show in tabular form, because we will use all our pivot tables in tabular form by default. Okay, now that you've done that, click OK. We're going to be building this type of report, sales by region. We're going to go to our data, which is car sales. Click on any cell inside the data set. Go to Insert Pivot Table. It will ask us, it will say, okay, we're going to use this data set. Create new worksheet. Let's use existing worksheet, and let's go to and put our pivot table right here, right under the example we already have. Now, what you will see on the right is a field list. Field list, also list of fields that's in our data set, and it has 4 different squares. The first square we're going to use is rows. The bottom left corner, bottom left square. This is a square where we do our grouping. So we're going to group by region, dealer region. So let's search for region, select and drag it into the rows square. Immediately We already have information. We got unique dealer regions in our dataset. We can sort them A to Z. So this is our first step. Like when we were doing it manually, first step was grouping. Excel in a cache remembers what each of those groups, what rows actually represent in our data set. Now we want to actually do our aggregation, and we're going to aggregate the price. Price column represents how much we sold the car for, and we're going to put into bottom right corner, bottom right square. That's a step that does aggregation. But we also need to specify what kind of function, what kind of aggregation function we're going to use. If you double click this cell, it will ask you summarize values by. What kind of function? Right now it's a count. We don't want count, we want a sum. So let's switch that and click sum. So now we have information about the amounts, but we need to format it. Let's right click and use number format. Do not use format cells, use number format and say currency. And we're almost done with our report. We would like to also sort it by largest to be first and down, so we can see which regions perform best. So we'll right click, sort, largest to smallest. We can rename the name of these columns. I'll say sum of price. We can say, let's say, amount sold. And instead of that calling dealer region, just call it region. We can do that. Let's put $. So we build our first pivot table. The second, let's look around a little bit. What we see is context menu here. We can rename our pivot table. Let's call it something that we can figure out. PV for pivot, let's say. Or pivot table underscore region amount. So now we have a name for it. We can go to design. We can change the colors. Let's pick, let's say, this one, or whatever else you like. You can create custom design. Well, we're going to move on, and we can create dealer. The business asked us, say, okay, now that we can see total amounts by region, we can see which region is the best performing. We also want to see under each region, we want to see dealer name. So we want to be able to break it down to also more granular to dealer name and see how the dealers do for each region. So we're going to build another pivot table. We're going to go back to our data set. Click on any cell. We'll go to Insert, Pivot Table. and do existing amount. We'll come back here, click enter and say OK. Again, we see the pivot table fields. We're gonna do, first step is grouping. We're gonna group by dealer name, region, and dealer name. So first we're gonna do region. Pick region and do it here, move it here. In the bottom left corner, this is a grouping. Now we need to group not just by region, but also by dealer name. And we're going to do that. So now Excel created groups for each region and for each dealer name. That's a separate groups. Just like what we did in our manual step. We had different groups for name of the salesperson and category. Excel doing the same thing, creating a group by region and by dealer name. Now aggregation, we're going to do the same, which is going to be price. I'm going to move it here. By default, it's set to count. We're going to double click, change it to sum. Okay, so we have our, we can right click, expand collapse, collapse. We can collapse entire field. So we can see pretty much the same report as we had before, other than we have more information. If we collapse, we can actually see information by dealer. Let's sort. Sort, largest to smallest. Let's go to each dealer. Sort, again, largest to smallest. So we're almost done. Other than let's format. Instead of format cells, we ignore that. We go numbers formatting. And put currency. So now we have the report we wanted. We can see that in the best performing is Austin, Texas. The best dealer in Austin is U-Haul. Second is Race Car Help, and so on and so forth. So we have information now. Instead of just data, we got an information. We know what's the best region, and we know what is a best performing dealer in each region. We know how much they sell in each region, how much each dealer sells, and grand total. Okay, now that we build this pivot table, let's change the design also. We also want to add extra filtering, or what we call slicers. There are two types of filters we can do. One is we can use this square on the top left corner. And if we do that, let's say we want to put filter by a company. We can pick or gender, doesn't matter. Let's put filter right here. And this filter will apply to this particular table, this particular pivot table. So right now I see the data for all genders. I can say, no, just give me only for females, how much we sold for females, to females, and how many we sold for males in total. So it looks like to females we sell 144 million, and to males, well, it looks like males buying a lot more cars than females. That's an information. Okay, so next is we can also do what we call slicers, which are, I think it's easier to use. So we can go here and click Analyze and insert slicer. And in the slicer we can pick which column we want to filter by. Now let's pick gender. Okay, so now we can do the same thing. We can select this filter. So now female and male. We can apply the slicer not just to one pivot table, but to two. Let's apply it to both. Let's name this pivot table. I'm going to go to design and let's name this pivot table this one we call pivot region sales amount. This one we'll call details, something like that. So now we can select the slicer and click report connection. So now it's applied to pivot sales amount details. And we can apply also to pivot region sales amounts. So now the same slicer will control two pivot tables. So let's try it. So as you see, as I change slicing, I'm getting data filtered by the slicer by both pivot tables. So I can potentially add many pivot tables to the same slicer. The slicer gives us extra dimension. So if we right now have information about a region, about particular dealer, but we have a third dimension, which is the gender of the customer. So let's say I only want to look at females. We obviously want to increase sales to females because they're underperforming males, so we can analyze which, let's say, region works best, or which salesperson sells better to females, and learn something from it. So it's already information, okay? So now we'll build more pivot tables. We'll continue building more. Let's build this report, sales by region by body style and body style. So we have a list of regions and we have body styles of the vehicles. We want to see the amounts, how much we sold for each region and each body style. For example, we can see that we sell more SUV than any other body styles. And we can also see by each region. Like in Austin, we sell more SUVs than any other body style of the cars. Let's build it. So we're gonna go to our car data set, car sales. I want to show you the shortcut that we're going to use, which is Alt NVT, since we create a lot of pivot tables. Let's use shortcut. Instead of going to insert pivot table, we will go do Alt, and you see the letter, the next one is N for pivot tables. Insert V for pivot table, a T from the range. Okay, so Alt and VT. So let's pick existing data sheet, and we'll build it right under our example. Okay. We have pivot table fields. Let's do grouping by region. And we need to pivot our values of a body style from the values of the column to the header names, to the column names. That's called pivoting, just like what we did manually. So let's do the body style, and we're going to drop it into columns square, which is upper right corner. Now, in each of the squares, we need to put a sum of sales that we did in each region by each body style. So how do we do it? We get price and put it under the values. By default, it showed this as count, but we will right click and summarize by. So here's different aggregation functions that we have. Let's pick sum. So now we have the values of actual sales, not counts, but amounts. And now let's right click again, number format, currency. One thing we could also do, right click, sort, largest to smallest. And we see some information. The information that we get, we can also format it, go to design, make it a little bit different format, whichever you like. So now we see some information. We see what's the total amount we sold, $671 million. We can see that SUVs, that Austin performs the best, and we can see that SUV sales $170 million, which is higher than any other body style. Then we have hatchback, and then so it's already good information to have. Okay, so let's build another one. Another report we're going to build is sales by dealer and regions. So this report will show us how our dealers are performing, right? Not regions, but dealer, and how each dealer perform in each region. So for example, we can see that Rabun used car sales is our top dealer, and he sold $37 million. This company sold $37 million in sales, and we can see that their biggest market is in Scottsdale. Okay, in fact, most of their sales comes from Scottsdale, and some from Austin. Second biggest market is Austin. So let's try to build this report. So we're going to go back to our data, car sales, and do Alt-NVT. Use existing and click OK. And pick where we want to put it. I'm going to put it right under our example. So we're going to group by dealer name. And we're going to pivot by dealer region. Put in the columns. Now we need to put values. The values will be sum of all sales, sum of prices. And again, we got counts instead of sums. We're going to click summarize value by and click sum. And then we're also going to do format sales. Sorry, we're not going to do format sales. We're going to do number format and click currency. So now we got this pivot table ready. Let's sort it by top performing first. Sort largest to smallest. And let's change design. And we're good to go. Now we're going to build a little bit more complicated report. We're going to get our quantity sold by car brand, sales amount by car brand. So we want to see what kind of brands we sell best, regardless of region or dealer. So we're going to see companies here, which is the brand of the vehicle. And for each brand, we're going to pivot sales amount and the quantity sold. So we could see that in our report that we sell the most. Chevrolet is the #1 selling brand, then Dodge, then Ford. Then we can see that we sold in Aurora, we sold 223 Chevrolets. The total quantity of Chevrolet sold is 1,819 at $47 million in sales. So let's build this report. Yes, we also can see total sales that we did in Aurora, let's say. We can see how much and total quantities we built in the region. So we're gonna go and build it underneath right here. Go back to our car sales data set. we'll use our shortcut Alt N V T. We'll use existing worksheet. Click to find where we're going to put it. We're going to put it right behind. Okay, so we're going to group by company. Here we can see all unique companies we sell. We're going to pivot by region. What the amounts, we want to have a quantity sold. In our data set, each car has unique ID. We're going to count unique IDs. So I'm going to take car ID and get actual counts. How many unique IDs we have. So if you can see summarize value by count, that's what we want. So we can see right away that we sold 698 Acuras. We can sort Z to A. And now we see the report in just vehicle sales, not the amounts, just vehicle sales. If we want to add amounts, we're going to do price. And put values right here. The amounts count also, so we don't want the count of price, we want sum of prices. So we go to summarize value by a sum. We can do number format and select currency. So now what we see in the report is that in a Chevrolet in Austin, Texas, or in Aurora, we sold 223 Chevrolets at $6 million. In Austin, Texas, we have 324 Chevrolets at $8 million. And so on and so forth. And we can see the total. We can see Scottsdale, 243 Chevrolets at $6 million, and total we sold 1,818 Chevrolets at $47 million. We can also see the amounts on the bottom of each column. Total amount sold in Scottsdale, we sold $95 million and 3,433 vehicles. Let's change the design. And we can put a slicer if that's what we want. So we have information about company, we have information about sales amounts. We can go design, insert slicer, and let's slice it by let's slice it by body style, let's say. So now we can say, okay, let's see how we're doing in SUVs only, and filter out only SUV sales. We can see by region. We can add another slicer. Analyze, let's put another slicer. And let's say we're going to put also by gender. So if we want to see how we're doing selling SUVs to females, so we sold $35 million SUVs. This is and operation, body style SUV and gender female. So we sold $35 million in SUVs to female and $134 million to males. Now let's see what's going on, let's say, with passenger cars. In females we sold $26 million, and for males $87 million. We can analyze, look like females buying more passenger cars than SUVs. Let's do sedan. $106 million for male and 27 for female. So we can analyze more, but this report already shows us that male buy a lot more in each category. Okay, now we're going to build a report, probability distribution by car brand. Basically, this probability distribution says that 7.61% of all cars sold are Chevrolets, 2.31% of all cars sold are SUVs made by Chevrolet, and 26% of cars sold are SUVs by all brands. So if customer randomly walks into a dealership and trying to buy a car or vehicle, we know the 26% chance he would want to have SUV and 12% chance he would want to have hardtop. So let's build this report. I'm going to put it right here. Go back to our car sales, data set, and we'll do Alt NVT. And put it into existing worksheet. Let's put it right here next to it. So again, we want to go by group by company. And we're going to pivot by body style. We're going to put car ID into our values. This pivot table will give us the counts of all cars sold. So totally we sold 23,000 cars. Now we can right click and say show values as. Basically here we can show the values as percent of grand total. So basically we have 689, and grand total is 23,906. Then we would expect to see value 689 divided by this value, and as a percent, 2.8%. So if we right click and summarize values as, show values as percent of grand total, 2.88%, just like we expected. So each of these values are percent of grand total. We can order, sort, largest to smallest, and we can see that there is 7.61% the chance that people will buy Chevrolet, 1.7% is the chance that people will buy hardtop Chevrolet, and 2.36% they would buy SUV out of all total cars, number of cars. One more quick report. So here we do probability distribution by car brand again, but we're gonna do percent of row total. So we have a pivot table that shows us car brands and body styles and the count of cars sold for each car brand and body style. Okay. We can right click, show values as percent of row total. Percent of row total. So percent of row total tell us that if we buy a Chevrolet, so out of all Chevrolets, 31% it would be SUV, 6% would be sedan, 23% will be passenger, 17% would be hatchback, and 22% would be hardtop. So each row, it basically shows us probability given that you're buying certain brand. So for example, we can look at some other brand. Looks like SUV dominating in all brands. Would be interesting to find if there are any SUV where there are any brands where a BMW is actually 41% chance that you're going to buy SUV, 26% sedan. But for example, Volvo, it's only 6% chance you're going to buy SUV, and 28% you're going to buy a hatchback. So it looks like Volvo SUVs are not selling well, or Volvo is not specializing in SUVs. There's Audi, 74% of SUVs. On average, 26% of all car sales are SUVs. Okay, one more report. So we want to see how our sales changing based on year and months. We can see in the report the sum of the amounts of sales per month, percent of yearly sales per month, and percent from different sales per month. For example, we can see that sales dropped 43% from September to October. Let's go back 89% from October to November. Let's try to build this report. Alt NVT for our, I'm going to go to the data set, Alt NVT. We'll use existing worksheet and we'll put it right next here. Okay, now we're going to group by date. Excel gives us grouping of year, quarter, months, and date. We're going to remove the date. We're going to remove the quarters. We're going to leave just years and months. The values we'll be aggregating is price. So we're going to put values price. We're going to sum and format number as currency. And we can see that in January is much smaller sales than in November, which makes sense. Okay, now we do this again. Take a price. Okay, again, change it to we'll change to sum again. But it will display it as percent of yearly total. So for that, we're going to go show values as percent of parent row total. That will give us percent of yearly total. Year is parent of months. And let's rename this column percent of year sales. So September we do 14% of the year sales, November for 15, and in December 14. So the most critical months for sales is September, November, December. The best time to buy is January, only they don't have a lot of people buying cars. January and February sounds like the best months to be in a dealership. Okay, let's do it again. We're going to calculate, change it again to sum from the count. And we're going to do show values as percent difference from a year from the months, from previous months, percent difference over previous months. Okay, and we got these numbers. So let's change the style. And we're done. Okay, one more report we're going to build is to show us the income of a customer versus the car price he or she is buying. So let's go to our data set, do Alt NVT, Alt NVT. I'll select existing worksheet. And we'll put it right here. So we're going to group by price. and we're going to pivot annual income. As you can see, the price has many values, and so is income. So we need to group it into groups so that we'll have basically the ranges. So we right click and we do group. So let's say starting from 1200, so let's do from 1000 all the way ending to 100,000. And let's say increase by 10,000. So we have our group from 1,000 to 11,000. It's probably better to actually group it by 5,000. So in cars, 5,000 makes a big difference. Okay, so we have more groups from 1,000 to 5,000, from 6,000 to 10,000. Our annual income, we're also going to group. Let's say from 10,000 to, there is a lot of difference in income here. Some people make millions, so we're going to put 150,000. And we're going to increase it by 10,000. Okay. Now we're going to get car IDs and account. And this report showing us that we don't really sell a lot to people from $20,000 income to $140,000 to $150,000 income. We either sell to very affluent individuals or people with low income. So mostly we sell to a lot of affluent people actually. With annual income more than $150,000, we sold 18,000 cars versus 5,274 to low income. So I guess our dealership specializing in very affluent individuals. So that's our breakdown of price and income. And we learned how to do ranges. So we can bin our values that are continuous, meaning that like prices and annual income, they're called continuous values because there is a lot of different values that we can have for prices and for income.